Welcome to this webinar. My name is Madeleine Engholm and I'm the CEO of Cypoint Inspire. Today we're going to talk about digital product passport. And together with me I have my old friend and long-lasting partner, Johan Boström. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I don't know if most know this, but Cypoint is actually our very first partner worldwide, and probably thus the most experienced one too. I don't think most know that we met about 20 years ago, and we were managing a big project, and in that project we came to the conclusion that we needed to centralize the product management, and thus we sort of came to invent what is today inriver. So it's truly a pleasure to be here.
It's nice to see you, Johan, as well. And I know that the subject today is one of your nowadays most favorite subjects. So let's tune in on what we're going to talk to today. We won't go into too small details, but a little bit details it's going to be. Digital product passport, what is that and where is the origin? Its origin from the EU supply chain law that's coming into place next year. And it's about the impacts of products being transparent, about origin, environmental effects, reuse, disposal, etc. So it's the life cycle environmental impact that we're going to talk about. And the EU wants to boost the demand for sustainable goods and support sustainable production. And in detail, because it could be a very small detail, Johan, it could be a QR code.
Yeah, the carrier can be a QR code, can be an RFID tag, but it basically points to a passport which contains all the information about the product's life cycle, the product's journey, but we'll go more into those details a little later.
Yeah, and the aim is to be transparent and to let the buyer do very well-known business advices as well. But how hard can it be to be that transparent and keep track?
It can be truly a big challenge. I think if you remember GDPR and the implementation of GDPR, that was quite a heavy lift for a lot of companies. I would say if GDPR was this big, DPP is from the floor to the ceiling. So it is a big challenge, and it's high time to start talking about it and start acting, because it's going to take a while to implement.
Yes, most companies, it goes into effect next year, and I think the batteries are the first ones out, but still there are a lot of uncertainty around this. The EU law chain hasn't been declared yet on every product.
No, it's not decided on the exact model and the exact requirements for all types of products. As you say, batteries are first out. But batteries are part of loads of different products. They're parts of cars, they're parts of boats, they're parts of everything basically we use for transportation. So it is not only the finished good like the car, it goes into the battery goes into a car. It's a part of a car. Thus, the battery needs a product passport, but so will the car. Yeah. And this, of course, stacks into each other like Russian dolls, and that's why it gets kind of complicated over time.
Exactly. And of course, the EU is now pushing this, but the demand is really from the customers, isn't it?
I would say so. You already have consumer buyer demand for it. We know that about 80% of all consumers will find it necessary to have this environmental information in order to make a purchasing decision. We know that about 30% require it. They really require it in order to purchase. So it's already a requirement from the consumers. This law basically only points to being even more transparent. And the transparency is, as you said, to drive sustainable production and to make repair, reuse, and recycling much easier, and in order to not use new virgin materials all the time when we produce products. And I think if we take that into account, we look at like an iPad. Most of us have seen or used an iPad. An iPad has about 350 suppliers going into the finished good.
350?
350.
In this small little thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
But then those 350 suppliers have suppliers, and the DPP, the Digital Product Passport, will require that you go all the way back to all of the parts and the raw materials going into it.
Exactly.
So the aluminum, the glass, and all of that needs to have its certificates and all the data about its contents. So given the complexity of a modern supply chain, this is going to be challenging because we need to capture all this data all the way up to the raw material in the supply chain.
So, and of course, this question mark, how do you tackle this?
That is sort of the big question, right? The elephant in the room. I think if we look at it, it's a lot of data that we are going to need to capture. We're looking at deforestation, emissions, pollution, raw materials versus virgin materials, transport emissions, all of those things needs to be put into the DPP. So we're talking about probably thousands of attributes and thousands of artifacts for a lot of products. So that is a challenge, and I think the biggest challenge here is actually to find that data in the supply chain, because modern supply chains are incredibly complex, and peeling this onion is hard. So that is why it's time to start now.
Exactly.
And not wait. I'm not saying you need to go and buy a PIM from inriver, because that is certainly a good way to start too. But start mapping out your supply chain. Start finding that data in your supply chain that you will need to trace, track, and put on the Digital Product Passport. So I think it's high time to start.
Yeah.
That's my advice to most customers.
And that's a huge challenge, of course. But in my perspective, there are also possibilities in this. I mean, if you start now, you get ahead of your competitors. So, because if you do this right, you can actually level up your customer service, your customer support. You can show your own customer that you have control. So this must be also good for the business.
I would say so. Part of a DPP is also repair instructions and service instructions, manuals, spare parts lists, and so forth. And if you look at the modern buyer, modern consumer, they want to self-service. And of course, if you collect all this data and can show it to the buyer and consumer in a very transparent way, you're of course going to be ahead of your competitors if you can do that soon, if you do that now. Servicing the customer is easier if you actually have a DPP. But again, I think that when you look at that, already today, it's hard for most companies to be that transparent and to help their customers and guide their customers after they purchase the product. So there's a huge ROI in doing this, and the cost of not complying in an EU law can be 4 to 6% of your revenue, so in fines. So instead of getting fined, start now and get the ROI.
Yeah.
That would be my advice too as well.
I know you told me the other day about John Deere in America who really are ahead of the competitors. Why don't you share us the story?
Yeah, John Deere, they make tractors and all kinds of farming equipment. And of course, they want to be able to reuse and recycle materials and all of that we just discussed for their own products. But when a farmer is producing or growing the crop or producing the meat, they will need to track all that information as well in order to comply with the DPP. So what the tractor actually is plowing, what it's adding to the soil, what kind of fertilizer that is used, how much water that is used in the production of the food is also going to be important. And there, with John Deere, they have had a strategy to really capture this data and help the farmers to capture this data so that they can add even more value. And if this takes time, new products take time to develop, new products take time to go to market. So they had to have a strategy a long time ago in order to be ahead of the game now. And that's of course a huge advantage when you get legislation like the Digital Product Passport. because they can actually help their customers to comply.
Exactly. And another story is also about the broken equipment in a garage or something, when you maybe get your spare part in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And the garage owner says, well, I can't afford to have you as a supplier. I bought a new one.
Yeah.
Because I can't afford to stand still.
I think that's also crucial in this case, because again, to reiterate, it's important to make it possible for customers to self-service. They want to self-service today, and that information that you have on the product passport will make it possible for them to self-service, and it will also make it easier and faster for you to service them, so they're not standing still because they can't get that part. And you will sell, of course, more product, but you also have longer customer relations because of the fact that you service them better.
So these are examples of possibilities that hides in the digital product passport and the EU law. So I think it's very interesting to see that in comparison to GDPR, where there was almost no money to get from that one, just a lot of work and boring work, this could actually give you ROI.
I would say so. If you can service your customers better than your competitors, you of course have a huge advantage, and especially in today's market. So starting now means that you will be prepared when the law comes into effect for the product category that you are selling or producing.
Exactly.
But it's also going to mean that you can help your customers and service them better already now.
Yeah.
So there's a huge advantage in doing this. It's not just the legislation, like you say, with GDPR, that has little or no value for the company. It has a lot of value for the consumer and for our privacy, but it doesn't have that much ROI. This can have huge ROI, and I would say if you have all the data about what's coming in your supply chain, you can make analysis about how you can improve it. You can probably cut costs in many places when you have all this data in place and can analyze it.
Because the analyze gives you a better view of what are you doing and how are your products and the supply chain, and what to do in change. You will want to do changes, and I was thinking about the timeline for this. I think we missed that from the beginning. It goes into effect next year with the first product category, and 2030, I think everyone needs to be done.
Yes,
So
2026.
that's tomorrow.
Yeah, 2026 is the year when you will have the first implementation, which is going to be batteries over 2 kilowatts. And then it's going to get rolled out across all product categories with some exceptions up until 2030. And it will basically affect more or less all product categories. You'll have apparel, you'll have automotive, you'll have all of it, electronics. So depending on the industry you're in, it's going to impact you at a certain point in time. But regardless of what industry you're in, start mapping out your supply chain and information supply chain now, because this is not going to be easy. It's going to take a while.
Exactly. So since we are quite big fans of PIM, so let's talk a little bit about PIM. How can PIM help out in this?
Well, PIM can help out in many ways. Today, PIM is a tool, it's a process support tool to manage product information, to capture it, to enrich it, and to publish it. Whether that is publishing to your own e-commerce websites, it is publishing it to Amazon, or publishing it to a printed catalog, PIM can help and really make that process very effective. Now, if we look at what will come with the DPP, that is likely to be way more data about products than we manage today. Yeah. So, of course, the PIM will be even more useful and even more valuable in the light of DPP and the requirements of DPP. So, from my perspective, it's a fantastic opportunity for us as a vendor, because we can actually help to make the world a little bit of a better place. Because you cannot make the world sustainable without capturing this data. You can't make the world sustainable without understanding the supply chains. And as we said, the modern supply chain is very, very complex, and we typically actually don't really know what's going on in it. So I truly believe that this will create not only transparency and drive consumer demand, but it will also make it possible to optimize your supply chains. And we already seen this happening in the pandemic, where we saw the fragility of the modern supply chain, and a lot of our customers are revamping their supply chains so they become less fragile. But I think this will also mean that they will have to revamp their supply chains to make them transparent, and also to see that transparency that the consumer and the buyer will get doesn't end up showing that you're actually not sustainable or not environmentally friendly. Because if you're not, that transparency will go all the way out to the consumer. So that is why this is also going to impact the actual physical supply chain. It's not just the information supply chain.
Yeah, and the payment systems around the world are now adapting and trying to get ahead of this. I think at inriver, I know you struggle, but you have an idea on how to really improve your product. We know that, and then a lot of customers will go into and benefit from that. So how do you think the products will look like in a couple of months when everyone starts?
Well, I mean, we've been looking at this for many years, and of course, given the enormous amount of data that's going to go into this, it puts pressure on us and our system to deal with that depth of data and the width of the data, and of course the quality of the data, the versioning or revisioning of the data.
Exactly.
Because it's not just a lot of data, you're also going to have versions of it, because this is not on SKU level, on item level, it's on batch level.
Exactly.
So we're going to have to look at that too, and we have been working on extending our platform and optimizing the platform to be able to deal with these challenges. But I think one thing is the platform itself and the PIM. I think another piece of this is how to actually set up the processes and the data model and all of that. And I know you guys have been at this for 20 years, so you know how to deal with huge amounts of data. Yeah. How would you attack that problem today with that kind of background?
Yeah, first of all, it's true that complex data models is our backyard somehow, but this is of course another level of it. But being able to look at the performance and look at the process of doing the data model even better and effective in this, I think it's going to be crucial for us. And we will also, of course, have to learn more about the DPP and the impact, and when the details of the law goes into effect, we will have to follow that, of course. But most of all, it's going to be looking at the data model, see how you work with it, and also together with the processes, because I think this will be even more important. Of course, you need to have a effective data model and all the fields actually that needs to go into the PIM system, but it will also have to be on a level where you apply the processes on it, and I think that's where we come into it, because we've done it before, and when we succeed is when we can talk both data model and the coming processes. How are the customers going to use the system so it will be effective, and support the processes, because if you don't have good processes, the data won't go into the PIM. So I think that's the combination is what we're going to be aiming for and looking, and that needs to be done now on our behalf as well.
I think so. I think you're touching upon that with the processes. To implement this is more than just implementing a PIM. It's more than just implementing a process. It's going to require a lot of change, and change requires change management. And I know that you guys do that too. So how would you attack that problem, like with the change? I know you have people that are working with that as well.
Exactly. Yeah, we do that, and that's our aim for that, is not to do just a project, is to stay with the customer, stay the whole journey, and adapt and change, adapt and change. And that's, we don't do only projects, we do life cycle management almost. So that's what we do.
Yeah, I think you're touching upon something that's important. I mean, you can look at this as something, you run a project and then you're done and you can publish DPPs. It actually, yes, it starts with a project, but it's going to have to turn into a program.
Exactly.
Because you're not going to be done. You're never going to be done. And as this also affects batch level of data, you're going to have to capture data all of the time and refine your processes to do that more efficiently over time.
Yeah, and the versioning, of course, is a very important detail of it, but not so easy to solve, I think. So it's an ongoing journey from now and forever, I think. So a little bit about step by step. I think the ones who are listening to us, okay, can we do this easy? Are there 1, 2, 3, 4, do this and then you're done, Johan? Or no, of course not. But maybe a little bit. Well, you started with do your product journey, do your supply chain investigation or analysis, but do we have more? Because that's one thing, but after that, start a project, assign resources. Really, this is going to affect your organization hard, because it's going to take a lot of resources from your own staff, who nowadays do other stuff. They need to do this for not on Tuesday afternoons at 3 o'clock. The whole day, I think.
I think it's I mean, mapping out the supply chain, looking at the information supply chain, seeing to find the sources today, see if you have them, see if you even can capture the data needed. And even though you don't have the detailed level of every attribute that's going to be needed for a product category, there's a lot of information available already, and there's a lot of things you can do if you start now. And I think starting a project to see to that you actually end up with a program that will run over time to manage this is going to be crucial. And I think that when we start doing the supply chain mappings and looking at the information in them, we're going to have to start looking at the actual physical supply chain too. And that is not easy. It's not something that you can do overnight. It's going to take time to do this, and that's why it's so very important to get going. Because revamping a supply chain, it's not easy. They're complex, and it's going to take a lot of time to see to that, one, you get the data in, but actually then to see to that that your products are actually produced in a sustainable way.
Exactly.
And that's a much bigger challenge than just capturing data. Because the transparency that the DPP will provide is going to mean that your products are going to show to the consumer and to the buyer if they are produced sustainably in a sustainable way or not.
Exactly.
So it's not just data, it's actually about the whole physical supply chain and the consumer experience.
This is the whole point of the law and the product from EU. It's not just to capture data, as you say, it's to change the products to be a more sustainable ways. So, well, huge challenge and huge possibilities.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't forget about the possibilities. I mean, you can see that as a GDPR, as we said, didn't provide that much value to the companies, but this can have huge impact, and there's so much that we can do already to start actually making money out of making the world a better place. Because there's nothing to be ashamed of that make money out of making the world a better place. That's a good thing. It's a driving force that the EU wants us to focus on.
Exactly.
And that'll be the true change. It's not the true change, it's not the DPP. The true change is that the transparency that will create sustainable supply chains in the future.
Well said. So, let's wrap this up. So, if you want to talk about DPP or PIM or something else that boosts your digital affair, you know where to find us. Thank you, Johan.
Thank you, Madeleine.